The warning lights turned red across Jake Morrison's cockpit. He slapped the control panel, hoping it would help, but nothing changed. His fighter shook violently as he flew through space near the edge of known territory. Come on, Jake muttered, his fingers moving fast over the controls. The radiation storm had come out of nowhere, frying half his systems before he could react. He was a good pilot, one of the best in the human fleet, but even the best pilot couldn't fly a ship that was falling apart. His radio crackled with static. No help was coming. He was too far from the main fleet, and his emergency beacon was dead. Jake checked his position and his stomach dropped. He was drifting into Valorian space. The Valorians didn't let anyone near their worlds. They were powerful, mysterious, and not friendly to visitors. The ship lurched hard to the left. Jake fought the controls, but it was no use. Gravity from a nearby planet was pulling him down. Through his cracked view screen, he could see a green and blue world growing larger, Valoris Prime, the Valorian homeworld, the one place in the galaxy where outsiders were absolutely forbidden. This is bad, Jake said to himself. This is really bad. He tried everything he knew to regain control, but the ship was dying. The engine sputtered and died completely. Now he was just a metal box falling from the sky. Jake strapped himself in tight and activated his suit's emergency systems. If he was going to die, at least he'd go down fighting. The ship hit the atmosphere like a rock hitting water. It burned and shook and screamed. Jake's teeth rattled in his skull. The heat was intense even through his suit. He could smell smoke and burning plastic. Then came the impact. The world went white, then black, then white again. Jake's head rang like a bell. He tasted blood in his mouth. Slowly, carefully, he moved his arms and legs. Everything hurt, but nothing felt broken. His suit had saved his life. Jake pushed the emergency release on his cockpit. The canopy blew off with a bang. Fresh air rushed in along with bright sunlight. He climbed out slowly, every muscle protesting. His ship was destroyed, scattered in pieces across a field of strange purple grass. He looked around. The sky was orange, not blue. 3 moons hung visible even in daylight. Tall crystalline structures rose in the distance, glittering like diamonds. This was definitely not Earth. That's when he heard the sound. A clicking, buzzing noise that made his skin crawl. Jake turned slowly and saw them. Soldiers, at least 20 of them, forming a circle around him. They weren't human. They stood on 2 legs like humans, but that's where the similarity ended. Their bodies were covered in hard, shiny shells like insects, ranging from deep black to metallic green. They had 4 arms each, and their heads were angular with large, multifaceted eyes. Each soldier carried a weapon that glowed with purple energy. Jake raised his hand slowly. "I come in peace," he said, even though he knew they probably didn't understand him. The soldiers clicked and buzzed at each other. One of them, larger than the others with red markings on its shell, stepped forward. It pointed its weapon at Jake's chest. The meaning was clear. A device on the soldier's chest lit up and a voice came out, translated into something Jake could understand. "You have violated sacred ground. You should die for this crime." "My ship malfunctioned," Jake said quickly. "I didn't mean to crash here. It was an accident." More clicking and buzzing. The red-marked soldier tilted its head, studying Jake. "Your vessel was destroyed. You should be dead." "How do you live?" Jake gestured to his suit. "We build redundant safety systems. Backup power, emergency cushioning, automatic medical injection. Humans aren't very strong, so we make tools to help us survive." The soldier seemed to consider this. It buzzed something to the others. Then it made a decision. "You will come with us. The Queen will decide your fate." They bound Jake's hands with some kind of energy field that tingled against his skin. Then they marched him across the purple field toward the crystalline structures. As they walked, Jake noticed more Valorians watching from a distance. Some were smaller, others larger. All of them had that same insectoid appearance that made Jake's instincts scream danger. The city was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Buildings grew from the ground like plants made of living crystal that pulsed with light. Roads curved in spirals rather than straight lines. Everything was organic and geometric at the same time. They brought him to the largest structure in the center of the city. It rose high into the orange sky, a palace of white and gold crystal. Guards stood at every entrance, their shells gleaming in the sunlight. Inside, the palace was even more impressive. The walls glowed with soft bioluminescent light. The air smelled like flowers Jake didn't recognize. His boots clicked on floors that looked like polished glass but felt warm under his feet. They walked for what felt like forever, through corridor after corridor until they reached a massive door. The red-marked soldier buzzed something and the door opened silently. The throne room took Jake's breath away. It was enormous, with a ceiling so high he could barely see it. Pillars of living crystal supported the space, each one glowing with different colors. Hundreds of Valorians stood in organized groups, all watching as Jake was brought forward. At the far end of the room, on a throne that seemed to grow from the floor itself, sat the Queen. Queen Ashira was magnificent and terrifying. She was twice the size of her soldiers, her shell a brilliant iridescent color that shifted between blue and purple and green as she moved. She had 6 arms instead of 4, each one graceful and deadly looking. Her eyes were larger, more complex, seeming to see everything at once. Jake was forced to his knees before her. His heart pounded in his chest. He'd heard stories about the Valorian Queen, how she'd ruled for over 100 years, how she never left her world, how she was both worshipped and feared by her people. A translation device activated and her voice filled the room. It was like crystal bells, beautiful and cold, an outsider on our sacred world. "This has not happened in 300 years. Your Majesty," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I apologize for the intrusion. My ship was damaged and I had no choice but to land here. I mean no disrespect to you or your people." The Queen leaned forward, studying him with those enormous eyes. "You are human, the soft species, the weak ones who should not have survived long enough to reach the stars." Jake bristled at that but kept his temper. "We're tougher than we look. Are you?" The Queen gestured with one hand. "Explain. Your vessel was destroyed. The crash should have killed you. Yet you stand before me with only minor injuries. How?" Jake explained again about his suit's safety systems, about human engineering, about how humans built layer after layer of protection because they knew they were fragile. The Queen listened, her head tilting slightly. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. The entire throne room waited in silence. Finally, she spoke. "Fascinating. You survived not through strength, but through cleverness, through preparation, through refusing to accept death." She stood, and every Valorian in the room bowed. "I will not execute you, human. Instead, you will stay here. You will answer my questions about your kind. You will attend me each evening." The court erupted in shocked buzzing and clicking. Jake stared up at the Queen in confusion. "You want me to stay here?" "Yes," Queen Ashira's eyes glittered. "I have many questions about humans, about how the weak become strong. You will provide answers." She waved a hand dismissively. "Take him to quarters, feed him. Keep him comfortable. He is now under my protection." As the guards led Jake away, he looked back at the Queen. She was watching him with an intensity that made him nervous. He'd come here by accident, crashed on a forbidden world, and somehow survived. Now the most powerful Valorian in existence wanted to talk to him every night. Jake had a feeling his life had just become very complicated. The room they gave Jake was strange but comfortable. The walls glowed softly with blue light, and the furniture seemed to grow from the floor. The bed was circular and surprisingly soft, though it took him a while to figure out how to use the alien bathroom facilities. A young Valorian visited him that afternoon. This one was smaller than the soldiers, with a lighter green shell and only 4 arms. The translator device on its chest activated as it entered. "I am Zixral," it said. The voice suggested male, though Jake wasn't entirely sure if Valorians had genders the way humans did. "I am a scholar. I will help you understand our ways, and you will help me understand yours. The Queen has commanded it." Jake nodded. "Nice to meet you, Zixral. I'm Jake Morrison, but just call me Jake." Zixral's head tilted in what might have been curiosity. "Jake. A simple name. Good. I will teach you about Valorian culture so you do not accidentally offend someone and get killed." "That would be appreciated," Jake said dryly. Over the next few hours, Zixral explained the basics. Valorians valued strength, survival, and honor above all else. Their queen was not just a ruler, but something like a mother to the entire species. She had lived for over a century and was the most powerful Valorian ever born. She rarely spoke to anyone directly, preferring to rule through her council of advisors. "That's why everyone was so shocked," Zixral explained. "The Queen has not shown personal interest in anyone for decades. Not since—" He paused, his antenna twitching. "Not for a long time. Since what?" Jake asked. "That is not my story to tell," Zixral said firmly. Now you must prepare. You will be summoned to the Queen's observatory at sunset. Do not keep her waiting." When the sun began to set, turning the orange sky to deep purple, guards came for Jake. They led him through the palace to a tower he hadn't seen before. At the top was a circular room with transparent walls that looked out over the entire city. Queen Ashira stood at the edge, looking out at her world. She didn't turn when Jake entered. "Come here, human," she said. Jake walked to stand beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. From this height he could see the whole city spreading out below, glowing with thousands of lights. Beyond the city were forests of strange trees and mountains that looked like they were made of glass. "It's beautiful," Jake said honestly. The Queen's eyes shifted to look at him. "You find our world beautiful? We have heard that humans prefer worlds like their own. Green growing things, liquid water, gentle temperatures." "Beauty comes in many forms," Jake said. "Your world is different from mine, but that doesn't make it any less beautiful." The Queen seemed pleased by this answer. She gestured to a low bench and they both sat. Jake tried not to be intimidated by her size. Even sitting, she was much larger than him. "Tell me about Earth," Ashira commanded. So Jake talked. He told her about blue skies and green grass, about oceans that covered most of the planet, about snow and rain and seasons. He told her about human cities, so different from this crystal palace made of steel and glass and concrete. Ashira listened intently, asking questions. She wanted to know about everything. How did humans build their cities? How did they survive before they had technology? What did they eat? How long did they live? "We're short-lived compared to you," Jake admitted. "Most humans live maybe 80 or 90 years if they're lucky. Some make it to 100. "So brief," Ashira said softly.
"How do you accomplish anything in such a short time?"
"We work fast," Jake said with a smile. "And we pass knowledge to our children. Each generation builds on what the one before learned. It's like a relay race. Nobody runs the whole distance, but together we keep moving forward." The Queen was quiet for a moment, processing this. "You said your species is weak, fragile, yet you have reached the stars. You have joined the coalition. You compete with species who are stronger, faster, who live longer. How?" Jake thought about how to explain it. "We're stubborn, I guess. We don't give up. When something tries to kill us, we find a way around it. We build tools. We work together. We adapt." He looked at his hands. "Individually, we're not impressive. But together, we're strong. And we refuse to accept that something is impossible just because it's hard." Ashira's antenna twitched in a way Jake was learning meant she was thinking deeply. "Your people survived ice ages on your world, yes? Before you had advanced technology?" "Yes, we nearly went extinct a few times. But we made it through. How?" "Fire, cooperation, innovation. We learned to make clothes from animal skins, to build shelters, to work together to hunt large prey. We told stories around fires to pass on knowledge. We took care of our sick and our old even when it was hard, because that's what made us human." The Queen stood and walked to the window again. "Cooperation. This is interesting. Valorians understand hierarchy, but cooperation between equals is difficult for us. Our instinct is to compete to prove strength." "Humans compete too," Jake said. "But we also know that we accomplish more together than alone." They talked for hours. The 3 moons rose in the sky, casting strange shadows across the palace. Jake told the Queen about human history, about wars and peace, about art and music and literature. He told her about the colonies humans had established on other worlds, about their dreams of exploring the galaxy. Finally, Ashira dismissed him. "Return tomorrow at sunset," she commanded. "I have more questions." Jake bowed and left, his head spinning from the intense conversation. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Jake spent his days with Zixrel, learning about Valorian culture and teaching the scholar about human ways. In the evenings, he was summoned to the Queen's observatory for more conversations. But there was a problem growing. The coalition wanted him back. His government sent messages demanding his return. They threatened sanctions against the Valorians if Jake wasn't released immediately. Queen Ashira's response was simple and firm. "He is my guest. He is under my protection. He will leave when I permit it and not before." This created a diplomatic crisis. Zixrel explained to Jake that the Valorian Council was worried. They didn't understand why their queen was so interested in a human. Some suspected he was manipulating her somehow. "Are you?" Zixrel asked one day, his tone neutral. "No," Jake said firmly. I'm just answering her questions. That's all? Then why does she smile when you arrive? Zixrel asked. Valorians do not smile often. It is not our way. But the queen, she has begun to smile. The servants have noticed. The council has noticed. Jake didn't know what to say to that. He'd noticed it too. The queen seemed different than when he'd first met her. Less cold, more alive somehow. One evening, as they talked in the observatory, Jake asked a question he'd been wondering about. Your Majesty, why are you so interested in humans? Why do you want to know all of this? Ashira was quiet for a long time. Finally she spoke, and her voice was softer than usual. Because you survived. Your species, against all logic, survived. And she paused. I need to understand how. Why? The queen turned to look at him fully. Because I am tired, Jake Morrison. I have ruled for over a century. I have been strong for my people, shown no weakness, made no mistakes. And I am so very tired of it. Jake saw something in her eyes he hadn't expected. Loneliness. Pain. This powerful queen, feared and worshipped by her people, was lonely. Among humans, Jake said carefully, we believe that showing vulnerability isn't weakness. It's honesty. It's human. I am not human, Ashira said. No, but maybe you don't have to carry everything alone either. The queen stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something that shocked him. She reached out with one hand and touched his shoulder gently. You are strange, Jake Morrison. Strange and refreshing. Before Jake could respond, alarms blared throughout the palace. The queen's head snapped up, her entire body tensing. A guard burst into the observatory, buzzing frantically. Ashira's translator activated. What is it? Your Majesty. There has been an assassination attempt. The target was the human. Jake felt his blood run cold. Someone had tried to kill him. The queen's eyes blazed with fury. Her voice when she spoke was like ice. Who dared? The guard trembled. A faction of nobles, Your Majesty. They believe the human was a threat to our way of life. They have been captured. Ashira stood to her full height, terrible in her anger. Bring them to the throne room. Now, I will deal with this personally. She looked at Jake. Come. You will witness what happens to those who threaten what is mine. Jake followed her from the observatory, his heart pounding. The queen had just claimed him as hers. He wasn't sure if that was good or bad, but he knew one thing for certain. His life had just gotten even more complicated. The throne room was packed with Valorians when Jake and Queen Ashira arrived. Every noble, every council member, every important figure in the city had gathered to witness what would happen. The air buzzed with tense clicking and chittering. 5 Valorians were brought forward in chains. Their shells were decorated with elaborate markings that Zixrel had taught Jake meant high social rank. These weren't common soldiers. These were nobles who had plotted against him. Queen Ashira sat on her throne and the entire room fell silent. When she spoke, her voice was cold enough to freeze fire. You attempted to murder my guest, one who is under my personal protection. Explain yourselves. The largest of the nobles stepped forward, his shell a deep bronze color. Your Majesty, we meant no disrespect to you, but this human is a danger. He has changed you. You have begun to emerge from your isolation. You speak of things that are not our way. We feared for our people. You feared, Ashira repeated slowly. You feared that I might change, that I might grow, that I might heal. The noble's antenna twitched in confusion. Heal? Your Majesty, we do not understand. Of course you do not. The queen stood and Jake could feel the power radiating from her. For 60 years I have hidden. I have ruled through others because I could not bear to face my people after losing my children. For 60 years I have been dead inside while my body continued to rule, and then a human crashed onto our world and reminded me what it means to feel again. The throne room erupted in shocked buzzing. Jake's translator could barely keep up with all the noise. The queen's children? He hadn't known about that. Ashira raised a hand and silence fell again. This human has committed no crime. He has shown me that strength includes the courage to feel, to heal, to hope. And you would kill him for that? You would deny your queen the right to live again? The bronze noble bowed his head. We did not know, Your Majesty. We thought you did not think, Ashira interrupted. You assumed. You feared change, and in your fear you violated the most sacred law of our people. You threatened one under royal protection. Her eyes blazed. The penalty is death. Jake's stomach dropped. He stepped forward without thinking. Your Majesty, wait. Every eye in the room turned to him. Zixral, standing near the back, made a gesture that clearly meant Jake should shut up. But Jake kept talking. Among humans, we believe in second chances. These nobles made a mistake, but it came from loyalty to you and to their people. That's not evil. That's misguided love. He looked at the 5 conspirators. Maybe instead of death, they could be shown why they were wrong. Maybe they could learn. The throne room was so quiet Jake could hear his own heartbeat. Queen Ashira stared at him for a long moment. Then incredibly she laughed. It was a strange sound, like wind chimes in a storm. Even now you show me new ways of thinking. She looked back at the nobles. You will not die. Instead, you will serve the human directly for 1 cycle of the moons. You will learn about him, about his people, about why I value what he brings. And if at the end of that time you still believe he should die, she paused. Then we will discuss it again. The nobles bowed deeply, clearly relieved to still have their lives. As they were led away, the queen dismissed the court. When the throne room was empty except for Jake and her guards, she looked at him. You are either very brave or very foolish, she said. Probably both, Jake admitted. Over the following weeks, Jake's life changed again. He was no longer just a guest or a prisoner or whatever he had been. The queen declared him part of her household, which in Valorian culture meant something important that Zixral tried to explain several times before Jake understood. It meant he was family. The 5 nobles who had tried to kill him became his constant companions, assigned to learn about humans and report back to the council. At first it was awkward, but Jake treated them with kindness and patience, answering their questions just like he answered the queen's. Slowly, they began to understand. They saw how Jake solved problems not with strength but with creativity. They watched him fix a broken water system in the palace, using techniques that seemed obvious to him but revolutionary to them. They listened as he explained human philosophy, human art, human dreams. The tallest noble, whose name translated to something like Bronze Wing, was the first to apologize. I was wrong about you, he said one day. You are not weak. You are different strong, Jake smiled. I'll take it. His evening conversations with Queen Ashira continued, but they changed too. They became less like interrogations and more like talks between friends. The queen told him about her life, about the weight of ruling an entire species, about the loneliness of being set apart from everyone else. One evening, she told him about her children. I had 5, she said softly, looking out at the moons. 5 beautiful children who would have been the future of our people. And then the plague came. It targeted only the young, only the royal bloodline. I watched them die one by one, and I could do nothing to save them. Jake felt his chest tighten. I'm so sorry. After they died, I could not bear to be among my people. Every face reminded me of what I had lost. So I withdrew. I ruled from a distance. I became a voice and a name, not a person. She looked at him. Until you crashed into my world and reminded me that I was still alive. How did I do that? Jake asked quietly. Because you should have died in that crash, but you did not. Because you faced me without fear when you should have been terrified. Because you showed me that survival is not just about continuing to breathe. It is about finding reasons to live. Jake didn't know what to say to that, so he did what humans do when words aren't enough. He reached out and took her hand. It was strange, holding hands with someone who had 6 of them, whose skin was hard shell instead of soft flesh, but it felt right. Ashira looked at their joined hands for a long moment. Among my people, this gesture means you claim kinship. You consider me family. Yes, Jake said simply. The queen's antenna trembled slightly. I have not had family in 60 years. You do now. They sat in silence for a while, hands joined, watching the moons move across the sky. Jake told her about his own loss, about the colony disaster that had killed his parents and his younger sister, about how he'd joined the military to escape the pain, only to find that running from grief didn't make it go away. How did you heal? Ashira asked. I didn't, not completely, Jake admitted. But I learned to carry it differently. I started remembering the good times instead of just the end. I started honoring their memory by living the kind of life they would have wanted for me. And I talked about them. Humans believe that people aren't truly gone as long as someone remembers them. Tell me about your sister, Ashira said. So Jake did. He told her about Lisa, who had been 12 when she died, who had loved old Earth movies and wanted to be a pilot like her big brother. He told stories that made him laugh and stories that made him cry, and Ashira listened to all of them. When he was done, the Queen spoke. "I will tell you about my children." And she did. She told him about each one, their personalities, their gifts, their dreams for the future. She cried as she talked, tears running down her iridescent shell. Jake had never seen a Valorian cry before. He didn't know they could. When she finished, Ashira looked at him with something like wonder. "I have not spoken their names in 60 years. I thought it would hurt too much. But you were right. Speaking of them keeps them alive. They're part of you," Jake said. "They always will be." The Queen reached out with multiple hands and pulled Jake into an embrace. It was awkward and strange, but also comforting. Two different species, two different worlds, united by shared grief and the courage to heal. From that night on, everything was different. Queen Ashira began to emerge from her isolation fully. She walked through her city, speaking to her people, attending ceremonies she had avoided for decades. And Jake was always at her side. The Valorian people began to accept him. They saw how their queen had changed, how she smiled now, how she seemed truly alive for the first time in their memory. They saw that the human wasn't a threat, but a bridge to something new. The 5 nobles who had tried to kill him became his guards and his friends. They reported to the council that humans were not weak, but differently strong. Not a danger, but a potential ally. Even the coalition began to relax. Captain Lisa Howard, Jake's former commander, came to Valoris for a formal visit. She met with Jake privately in his quarters. "You've caused quite a stir," Lisa said, looking around at the crystal walls. "The whole galaxy is talking about you and the Valorian Queen." "I didn't mean to cause problems," Jake said. Lisa smiled. "Maybe the galaxy needed some problems. The Valorians have been isolated for centuries. If you're the reason they're finally opening up, that's not a bad thing." She studied his face. "You look different. Happier, maybe." "I think I am," Jake admitted. "For the first time since my family died, I feel like I have a purpose beyond just surviving." "That's good," Lisa said. "Because I need to ask you something official. If Queen Ashira asks you to stay permanently, what will you say?" Jake had been thinking about that question for weeks. "I don't know yet." "Well, think about it," Lisa said. "Because I have a feeling that question is coming soon." She was right. That evening, when Jake arrived at the observatory, Queen Ashira was waiting with something in her hands. It looked like a piece of living crystal, glowing with soft blue light. "This is a royal token," she explained. "It is given only to those who are part of the royal household truly and permanently." She held it out to him. "I would like you to accept it, Jake Morrison. I would like you to stay here with me, not as a guest or a prisoner, but as family, as my chosen companion." Jake stared at the crystal, his heart racing. This wasn't just an invitation. This was a life-changing decision. If he accepted, he would be giving up his old life, his career in the human military, his chance to ever return to Earth permanently. But he would gain something too. He would gain a purpose, a family, a chance to be part of something bigger than himself. He thought about his sister, about what she would tell him to do. Lisa had always said he should stop running and start living. She would probably tell him to take the chance, to be brave, to accept the gift he was being offered. Jake reached out and took the crystal from Ashira's hand. The crystal felt warm in Jake's hand, pulsing with a gentle rhythm like a heartbeat. The moment he touched it, he felt something change. It was hard to describe, like a door opening in his mind that he hadn't known was there. Queen Ashira smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed her alien features into something beautiful. "You accept?" "Yes," Jake said. "I accept." Before either of them could say more, the peaceful moment shattered. Alarms blared throughout the palace, harsh and urgent. The observatory's walls suddenly displayed tactical information that Jake's military training helped him understand, even though it was in Valorian symbols. Ships. Lots of ships. Coming in fast, Ashira's entire body tensed. She touched a panel on the wall and a voice came through, buzzing frantically. Her translator spoke over it. "Your Majesty, we are under attack. The Kreth have entered our system with a massive fleet." Jake's blood went cold. The Kreth. He'd heard of them during his military service. They were an aggressive empire that had been testing coalition defenses for years, looking for weaknesses. They were brutal, efficient, and they didn't negotiate. "How many ships?" Ashira demanded. "Over 200, Your Majesty. They are demanding our surrender. The Queen's laugh was harsh. Surrender? Valorians do not surrender. She looked at Jake. You are military. What do you know of the Kreth? Jake's mind raced, pulling up everything he'd learned in tactical briefings. They use overwhelming force. Standard strategy is hammer and anvil. They'll pin your fleet against the planet while their heavy ships pound you from above. It's effective because most species fight head-on, trying to match strength with strength. And humans? Ashira asked, her eyes sharp. Humans don't fight fair, Jake said. We hit where you're not looking. We find the weak point and exploit it. The Kreth command ships will be in the back, coordinating the attack. If those ships go down, their whole formation falls apart. Ashira was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then she made a decision that shocked everyone. Take me to the war room, and bring the human. He will help us plan our defense. The war room was chaos. Valorian generals and admirals stood around a holographic display of the space battle developing above them. The Kreth fleet was massive, their ships dark and angular, moving in perfect formation. The Valorian defense fleet was smaller but holding its ground. For now. When the Queen entered with Jake at her side, every Valorian in the room stopped and stared. One of the generals, his shell marked with battle scars, spoke up. Your Majesty, this is a military matter. The human should not— The human stays, Ashira said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Jake Morrison, you will advise us. How do we defeat this attack? Jake stepped up to the holographic display, studying it. All eyes were on him. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. These people were trusting him, and if he was wrong, thousands would die. Show me your fleet capabilities, he said. What can your ships do that the Kreth won't expect? The admirals explained. Valorian ships were tough, built for direct combat. But they also had something interesting. Smaller fighter craft that were incredibly fast and maneuverable. They'd rarely used them in real combat because the Valorian way was to fight with honor, capital ship against capital ship. That's your advantage, Jake said, pointing to the tactical display. The Kreth expect you to fight their way. Don't use your fighters. Send them in small groups, fast and unpredictable. Have them target the command ships in the back. The Kreth won't expect small craft to be a serious threat. This is dishonorable, one general protested. We do not strike from behind. Honor doesn't matter if you're dead, Jake shot back. And there's no dishonor in protecting your home using every tool you have. Queen Ashira studied the tactical display. He is right. We will do this. She looked at her admirals. Implement the human strategy. At that moment, another voice crackled over the comm system. Captain Lisa Howard of the Coalition Fleet. Valorian forces. This is Captain Howard of the Coalition ship Starbound. We're still in orbit. We can help if you'll accept our assistance. Jake grabbed the communication panel. Lisa, it's Jake. The Kreth are using a standard hammer strategy. I've got the Valorians sending fighters at their command ships, but we need to keep their main fleet busy. Can you run interference? Copy that, Jake. We'll give them something to shoot at. Starbound out, the battle began in earnest. On the holographic display, Jake watched as the Valorian fighters launched in waves, darting between the larger Kreth ships like insects. The Coalition fleet moved in, drawing fire from the Kreth main force. It was working, but barely. Send more fighters to Sector 7, Jake directed. That command ship is trying to reposition. Cut it off. The Valorian admirals followed his directions, some reluctantly, others with growing confidence. The battle raged for hours. Jake stood at the tactical display the entire time, calling out positions, suggesting maneuvers, coordinating between the Valorian fleet and Lisa's coalition ships. Queen Ashira stood beside him, watching him work. Once she leaned close and spoke softly. You are in your element, Jake Morrison. This is what you were trained for. Doesn't mean I like it, Jake muttered, watching as another ship exploded on the display. Every one of those is full of people. Yes, and you are saving thousands more. The turning point came when a squadron of Valorian fighters managed to disable the main Kreth command ship. Without central coordination, the Kreth formation began to fall apart. Their ships started pulling back, confused and leaderless now, Jake said. Hit them with everything you've got. Don't give them time to regroup. The Valorian fleet surged forward. The coalition ships added their firepower. The Kreth fleet broke and ran, jumping to faster-than-light speeds to escape. The battle was over. The war room erupted in clicking and buzzing celebrations. Valorians embraced each other, their usual stoic nature forgotten in the joy of victory. They had won against impossible odds. Bronze Wing, one of the nobles who had tried to kill Jake weeks ago, approached him. "Human Jake, that was brilliant. You saved our world today." "We all did," Jake said, suddenly feeling exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, and he realized he'd been standing for over 6 hours. Queen Ashira addressed her admirals. "Let it be known across all of Valoris. The human Jake Morrison led our defense today. He will be honored as a hero of our people." But there was no time for celebration. Reports started coming in of casualties, of damaged ships, of Valorians who had died defending their world. The Kreth had been driven off, but the cost had been high. Worse, Jake had been injured at some point without noticing. During a particularly intense moment, an explosion had shaken the palace and flying debris had caught him across the side. Now that the battle was over, the pain hit him all at once. He stumbled and Ashira caught him with her multiple arms. "You are hurt." "Just a scratch," Jake tried to say, but the world was spinning. The next few days were a blur. Jake woke up in the palace medical wing, his side bandaged. Valorian doctors had treated him, their methods strange but effective. Queen Ashira was there when he woke up, sitting beside his bed. "You should have told someone you were injured," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "There wasn't time," Jake said. "The battle is over. You won it for us. Now you must rest and heal." But Jake couldn't rest. His mind kept replaying the battle, thinking of all the people who had died. He'd made calls that saved thousands, but those calls had also meant sacrifices. Ships he'd sent into dangerous positions, pilots who hadn't come back. Ashira seemed to sense his thoughts. "You are feeling guilt for those who died." "I gave the orders," Jake said quietly, "and because of your orders, hundreds of thousands live." She took his hand. "This is the burden of command, of leadership. You make choices and people live or die by them. But you made the right choices, Jake Morrison. You saved my world. You saved my people." Over the following days, as Jake recovered, Valorians came to visit him, soldiers who had followed his orders in the battle, families whose homes had been saved. Even the scarred general who had objected to Jake's presence in the war room came to thank him. "I was wrong about you," the general said gruffly. "You have the mind of a warrior, even if you lack the body of one." Captain Lisa Howard visited too. She stood at the foot of his medical bed with her arms crossed, looking at him with a mixture of pride and exasperation. "You've done it again," she said. "Caused an incident and somehow made it work out. The whole coalition is talking about how a human helped the Valorians win an impossible battle." "Just doing what I could," Jake said. Lisa's expression softened. "You did good, Jake, real good, and for what it's worth. The coalition is officially recognizing the alliance between humans and Valorians. This battle proved we're stronger together." After she left, Jake found himself alone with his thoughts. He'd come to this world by accident. He'd expected to die or at best be imprisoned. Instead, he'd found a purpose. He'd found a family. He'd found a place where he mattered. Queen Ashira came to see him every day during his recovery. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence. One evening, as the 3 moons rose outside his window, she spoke. "When I gave you the royal token, I asked you to stay as my companion. Do you understand what that means in our culture?" Jake had learned more about Valorian customs during his time here. "I think so. Among my people, the queen chooses one mate for life. It is a sacred bond. She paused, her antenna trembling. "I did not expect to feel such things again. Not after my children died. But you have awakened something in me that I thought was gone forever." Jake's heart pounded. "Ashira, I'm human. You're a Valorian. We're completely different species." "Yes, and perhaps that is why this works." She looked at him with those enormous, complex eyes. "You see me not as a queen to be feared or worshipped, but as a person. You showed me how to live again, how to hope, how to feel, and I find that I do not wish to face the future without you." Jake thought about his old life, his career in the military, his small apartment on a human colony world, his routine existence. He thought about what he had now. A purpose, a family, a queen who looked at him like he was precious. "If I stay," Jake said slowly, "I can't be just a companion who nods and agrees with everything. I'm going to have opinions. I'm going to see things differently than Valorians do." "I know," Ashira said. "That is exactly why I want you here." Jake smiled. "Then yes, I'll stay for real, forever, if you'll have me." The queen's joy was visible in every line of her body. She reached out and took both his hands in hers. Then we will face whatever comes together. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light. Queen Ashira of the Valorians, the most powerful and isolated monarch in known space, had chosen a human as her life companion. The reaction was immediate and divided. Some species celebrated it as a sign of a new era. Humans and Valorians working together had driven off the Kreth. Now their leaders were united in an unprecedented bond. It suggested possibilities for cooperation that had never existed before. Others were horrified. They called it unnatural, dangerous, a violation of the natural order. How could such different species form a bond? What would it mean for the balance of power in the coalition? Jake watched the news reports with Zixral, who had become something like his best friend during his time on Valoris. The young scholar found the whole situation fascinating from an academic perspective. "You have become the most famous human in the galaxy," Zixral observed. "How does that feel?" "Weird," Jake admitted. "I just wanted to survive a crash landing. Now I'm a political statement." "You are more than that," Zixral said seriously. "You are proof that different species can understand each other. That is valuable." The Valorian High Council requested a formal meeting with Jake and the Queen. They gathered in the Great Council Chamber, a circular room where 15 of the most important Valorians sat in a ring around the throne. The head counselor, an ancient Valorian whose shell had turned almost white with age, spoke first. "Your Majesty, we must address this situation directly. You have chosen a human as your mate. This has never happened in our history. We must understand your reasoning." Queen Ashira stood, and every counselor fell silent. "My reasoning is simple. Jake Morrison has shown me that strength comes in many forms. He saved our world using methods we would never have considered. He showed me how to heal from grief that had paralyzed me for 60 years. And he treats me not as a distant queen, but as a person worthy of care and respect. But he is human," another counselor protested. "So different from us. How can such a bond work?" Jake decided to speak up. "If I may, counselor. Yes, I'm human. I breathe oxygen, I'm soft-skinned, I only have 2 arms. But I also think, feel, hope, and dream. Queen Ashira does too. We're not as different as we look." "The human speaks wisdom," Bronzewing said, stepping forward from where he stood with the other guards. "I tried to kill him once. I thought he was a weakness that would destroy us. But he showed mercy when he could have demanded my death. He taught me about human ways. And I saw him save our world using nothing but his mind. He is worthy of our queen." Other voices joined in, some supporting Jake, others expressing doubts. The debate went on for hours. Finally, the ancient head counselor raised a hand for silence. "There is only one question that truly matters," he said. "Your Majesty, are you happy?" Ashira looked at Jake, and her expression softened in a way that Jake had learned meant deep emotion. "Yes, for the first time in 60 years I am truly happy." The counselor nodded slowly. "Then the council supports your choice. Let the galaxy think what it will. Our queen's happiness is worth more than their opinions." But approval from the council wasn't the end of the challenges. The human government wanted to meet with Jake, too. Captain Lisa Howard returned to Valoris, this time with a delegation of human diplomats and officials. They met in a private chamber. Just Jake, Lisa, and 3 stern-looking diplomats from Earth. One of them, a woman named Patricia Green, who held some important title Jake didn't quite understand, got right to the point. "Lieutenant Morrison, you understand that your decision has significant political implications." "I'm starting to," Jake said dryly. "The question is whether you're acting in humanity's best interests or your own," another diplomat said, a man named George Palmer. "Some people think you've been manipulated, that the Valorians are using you." Jake felt anger flash through him. "I'm not being manipulated. I'm making my own choice. A choice that makes you potentially the most influential human in the galaxy," Patricia said. "As the Queen's consort, you'll have access to Valorian technology, military secrets, political decisions. We need to know where your loyalties lie." "My loyalties," Jake said slowly, "are to doing what's right. For humans, for Valorians, for everyone. I'm not a spy, and I'm not going to become one." Lisa had been quiet until now. She spoke up. "If I may, ma'am. I've known Jake for 5 years. He's one of the most honest people I've ever met. If he says he's not being manipulated, he's not. And if he says his loyalties are to doing what's right, I believe him." The diplomats exchanged glances. Finally, Patricia nodded. "Very well. The human government will officially recognize your union with Queen Ashira. But understand, Lieutenant Morrison, the whole galaxy will be watching. Don't make us regret this support. After they left, Lisa stayed behind. She looked at Jake with a mixture of emotions. You know this is crazy, right? Yeah, Jake said. And you're sure about it? More sure than I've been about anything in a long time. Lisa smiled. Then I'm happy for you, truly. She hesitated. But I'm also going to miss having you around. You were a good officer, a good friend. I'll still be your friend, Jake said. I'm just going to be doing it from a palace on an alien world. At least send messages sometimes, Lisa said. Let me know how you're doing. And if you ever need help, you'll be the first person I call. The formal bonding ceremony was planned for the next full alignment of the 3 moons, which Valorians considered especially auspicious. In the weeks leading up to it, Jake worked with Ashira and her advisors to plan something that honored both human and Valorian traditions. It was harder than it sounded. Valorian bonding ceremonies involved complex dances and chemical exchanges that humans couldn't perform. Human ceremonies involved spoken vows and symbolic gestures that meant nothing to Valorians. In the end, they created something new. A ceremony that borrowed from both cultures but belonged wholly to neither. A bridge between worlds, just like their relationship. The ceremony was held in the palace's greatest hall, broadcast across the galaxy. Thousands of Valorians attended in person. Representatives from dozens of species watched via hologram. It was the most watched event in Coalition history. Jake wore a modified version of his military dress uniform, altered to include Valorian symbolic patterns. Ashira wore ceremonial armor that had belonged to her mother, polished until it gleamed like a rainbow. The ceremony began with Valorian traditions. Ashira performed the traditional dance of bonding, her movements graceful despite her size. Bioluminescent patterns appeared on her shell, glowing in complex designs. Jake watched in awe, understanding that he was seeing something sacred and ancient. Then came the human elements. Jake spoke vows that he'd written himself, promising to stand beside Ashira through whatever came, to be honest and true, to support her in her duties and to challenge her when she needed it. Ashira responded with her own vows, translated into human language but clearly heartfelt. I promise to value your differences as much as I value what we share. I promise to learn from you as you learn from me. I promise to walk beside you for as long as we both live, in this world and whatever comes after. The final part of the ceremony was the exchange of tokens. Ashira gave Jake a living crystal that would keep him connected to her, no matter the distance. Jake gave Ashira a small piece of earth, a smooth stone from a beach where he'd played as a child, polished by ocean waves for countless years. This is from my world, Jake said. A piece of earth to remind you that our 2 worlds are now connected through us. Ashira held the stone carefully, understanding its significance. I will treasure it always. When the ceremony ended, the entire hall erupted in celebration. Valorians clicked and buzzed their approval. The holographic observers from other species transmitted messages of congratulations or, in some cases, carefully worded diplomatic statements that were neither approval nor condemnation. That night, Jake and Ashira stood together in the observatory where they'd had so many conversations. The 3 moons were perfectly aligned, casting silver light across the city below. Do you have regrets? Ashira asked quietly. Jake thought about his old life. His career, his home, the familiar comfort of human spaces. He thought about what he'd given up to be here. Then he thought about what he'd gained. No, he said honestly. No regrets. Good, because now the real work begins. She was right. Their union wasn't just personal. It was political. In the weeks that followed, they began the work of truly opening Valoris to the outside galaxy. Human advisors came to the palace, carefully teaching Valorians about coalition customs. Valorian scholars traveled to human worlds, learning about humanity's diverse cultures. Jake found himself in a strange new role. He was a cultural bridge, a translator not just of language but of concepts and customs. He helped Valorians understand human art and music. He helped humans understand Valorian honor and loyalty. He settled disputes and explained misunderstandings and slowly, carefully helped 2 very different peoples learn to work together. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks and arguments and moments when it seemed like the cultural gap was too wide to cross. But Jake and Ashira kept working at it, showing by example that it was possible. Bronze Wing and his fellow nobles became ambassadors to human worlds. Zixrel started the first Valorian human cultural exchange program. Captain Lisa Howard was promoted and given command of a joint human-Valorian military task force, defending coalition space against threats like the Kreth. 6 months after the bonding ceremony, Jake stood in the palace gardens watching Valorian children play in the strange purple grass. Some of them were being taught by human teachers, learning about Earth and humanity. Others were teaching human children who had come to Valoris about Valorian ways. Ashira joined him, standing close enough that their shoulders touched. "You are thinking deep thoughts." "I'm thinking about how strange life is," Jake said. 6 months ago I was just a pilot on patrol. Now I'm married to an alien queen, helping to reshape galactic politics. Do you find it overwhelming? Sometimes. But then I remember that all of this started with a crash landing. One accident that turned into something amazing. Ashira's antenna twitched in amusement. "An incident, you might say." Jake laughed. "Yeah, it began as an incident. And now here we are." "Here we are," Ashira agreed. She took his hand, weaving her fingers through his. "And where will we be tomorrow?" "Together," Jake said. "Figuring it out as we go." "That is very human," Ashira observed. "You're stuck with me now," Jake said with a smile. "You'll probably pick up more human habits the longer I'm around. I look forward to it." They stood in the garden as the sun set, turning the orange sky to purple and gold. Around them, human and Valorian children played together, learning each other's games, building friendships that would shape the future of both species. It had begun as an incident. A crash, an accident, a mistake, but from that incident had grown something no one could have predicted. A bond between two individuals that became a bridge between worlds, a proof that different didn't mean incompatible, and that the courage to reach across the gap between species could change everything. Jake Morrison had crashed onto a forbidden world expecting to die. Instead, he'd found a home, a purpose, and a love that transcended the boundaries of biology and culture. He'd found a queen who wanted him beside her not just at night, but through every challenge and triumph. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Jake knew that this was just the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more obstacles to overcome, more bridges to build between the human and Valorian worlds, but they would face it all together. The human pilot and the alien queen, proving every day that the most powerful force in the galaxy wasn't technology or strength or ancient tradition. It was the simple courage to connect, to understand, and to choose hope over fear. The incident that had brought them together had become the foundation of something far greater, and neither Jake nor Ashira would have changed a single moment of how it had happened. Together they turned back toward the palace, ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring. Different species, different worlds, but united in purpose and bound by something that needed no translation. Love, in whatever form it took, was universal after all.